The US says it's obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities, but is that true? Tehran says it's removed all nuclear material before the US airstrikes and insists its know-how can't be destroyed. So, is bombing the answer for Iran's nuclear ambitions? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. Donald Trump says Sunday's US airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites have caused total obliteration of its nuclear programme. But the US Joint Chiefs of Staff says the final analysis is yet to come. The head of the nuclear watchdog for the UN says something similar. It can't assess the damage since the most significant portion of it was underground. Iran's Atomic Energy Agency insists the US attacks won't affect its work and that the nuclear material had already been removed. So, what do we know about the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities? How much damage can be done to those deeply buried sites? And if the strikes were effective, with the right technological know-how, could Iran easily rebuild? We'll put all of those questions to our guests shortly, but first, this report from Imogen Kimber.
The US says it has destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities, with 3 strikes on the nuclear sites at Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan.
Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could, until President Trump.
The Defense Secretary echoes what the president himself has said. Trump says the most devastating damage was underground, where the essential parts of Iran's nuclear facilities are thought to be. To make a hit so deep underground, the US used 2 of its so-called bunker buster bombs, dropped by B-2 stealth bombers. Weighing around 13,000 kilograms, the most powerful conventional bombs can pierce through the ground to at least 60 metres down, then detonate thousands of kilograms of explosives. Only the US is known to have this capability, and it's the first operational use of this weapon. But it's not clear yet how much damage these bombs have caused.
Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction.
And the US Vice President believes the bombing has largely achieved its goal.
I'm not going to get into sensitive intelligence about what we've seen on the ground there in Iran, but we've seen a lot, and I feel very confident that we have substantially delayed their development of a nuclear weapon, and that was the goal of this attack.
The head of the UN nuclear watchdog, Rafael Grossi, says the level of damage can't be assessed since the sites are underground.
At this time, no one, including the IAEA, is in a position to have fully assessed the underground damage at Fordow. Given the explosive payload utilized and the extreme vibration-sensitive nature of centrifuges, very significant damage is expected to have occurred.
Iran has confirmed damage to the sites, but says the nuclear material had already been removed, and insists the civilian technology it has been developing over decades remains. The IAEA and many in the American intelligence have long agreed Iran is not developing a nuclear weapon. But some argue this kind of attack is motivation for Iran to get one. Imogen Kimber, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests in New York. Laura Rockwood, Senior Fellow, Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation in Toronto. Imad Khadduri, former nuclear scientist at the Iraqi Atomic Energy Commission and author of Iraq's nuclear Mirage, Memoirs and Delusions. And in London, Roxane Farmanfarmaian, Director of International Studies and Global Politics at the University of Cambridge and a Senior Associate Fellow at the European Leadership Network. A warm welcome to you all. I'd like to begin in London with Roxane. Roxane, with typical bluster, Donald Trump has said he has obliterated, that's the word he used, Iran's nuclear program. But the truth is, obliterated is a very, very big word. It's going to take a little while for us to see what the actual damage is. Talk us through what the procedure is to actually confirm this kind of obliteration, to use that word.
Well, a great deal of information is going to be coming in on satellite imagery. And in fact, some of the first ones are being reported to have been revealed very recently over the last few hours. And this reveals that there have been hits at 3 different sites in Iran, in Fordow, outside of Isfahan, and at Natanz. And what they have revealed is that so far there has been, the attacks were on target. They did hit each of these sites. And it's very difficult, however, to see what has happened underground. The sites are generally being thought to have been emptied in large part by the Iranians. So it has not been surprising that also one of the other ways of determining the success of this project would be to see how much uranium or radiation there would be in the air. And so far, none has been picked up, as reported by the International Atomic Energy Association, the IAEA. So it is the type of thing that's put together in pieces, both visually and in terms of air quality and, of course, photos and visits to the sites themselves.
In Toronto, Imad, you have had experience with this kind of attack that's taken place. The attack that took place on the Osirak facility in Iraq is something that you talked about in your book. What are you looking for when it comes to seeing all this satellite imagery? What are you looking for to might suggest to you that this has worked as an attack?
This has not worked out. The same as in 1991, when the United States attacked Iraq, carpet bombed all of Iraq. By chance, they hit our enrichment facility buildings. And they didn't know what it was. They just hit it, as I said, carpet bombing. When they looked at the images and they compared the images with other images, they found a similar installation 200 kilometers north of Iraq, of Baghdad. So they bombed that, that second one was actually a standby in case the first one goes down. So it was by chance. Furthermore, the institution that's called Al-Athir, which was the institution where the atomic bomb was designed, was being fabricated, getting the uranium metal core. When they hit that, they only hit the electrical substation. And then by a mistake of one of our colleagues, they found documents which they realized that was the real place where the bomb was being designed and manufactured.
Right.
So,
okay.
What they did, the IAEA under Zeffirello, who was a CIA agent, they took the engineers and scientists to the site to show them how it is being blown up. They blowed it up on the ground. My point is that aerial bombardment, like what happened 3 days ago, on these sites in Iran, they are just propaganda theater. Unless you have boots on the ground and checking these sites and blowing up these sites, all these bombs and bunker buster bombs, they are really a theatrical showpiece.
Well, Imad, let me put that point to Laura Rockwood, who joins us from New York. Laura, what do you make of that? That it is just theatrics, that they can't, that this hasn't actually been effective?
I think the difference here is with respect to Fordow and Natanz, you're talking about centrifuge enrichment facilities, and centrifuges are extremely sensitive. So if the electrical source of electricity was cut, those centrifuges could spin out of control. So it may not have required a bunker buster to if you will, kill those centrifuges. I don't think it was just, let's say, for show, but I think our colleagues are right in suggesting that it will require, if you will, people going in to visit these facilities to see what the actual damage was. The uranium conversion, UCF in Isfahan, was pretty badly damaged, at least from satellite imagery, you can see it. So it's a slightly different situation. And what we're worried about in terms of Natanz and Fordow is not so much that they removed equipment, but they could conceivably, and probably did, remove the enriched uranium, in particular the 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, and we don't know where it is. Luckily, there are IAEA inspectors in Iran right now, and if they are allowed to visit these facilities, or let's say the sites where these facilities were, we would have a better sense of how, if you will, effective this targeting was.
Roxane, it's a very interesting point that Laura brings up, because we are talking about the idea that there is 400 kilograms of enriched uranium at 60% that the Iranians say they removed, but we don't know where that is. Certainly publicly we don't know where that is. But Iran is being watched like a hawk by the Americans, by the International Atomic Energy Agency, by the Israelis. Someone must know where that stuff is. Is it a concern that we don't know publicly where it is, or is this just part and parcel of how this is done?
Well, I think there's two parts to this. I think that there were negotiations taking place before the Israeli attack. The Iranians were feeling that these might not go exactly as they had expected. There were threats being made against Iran at that point by the Israelis in terms of planning an attack, and these were public. So I think it's very possible that the Iranians then did take preemptive moves to displace this, particularly this stockpile that the other guest referred to. And of course, there were satellite pictures taken of trucks that were built up around Fordow and also Natanz and Isfahan prior to the attack. But what we don't know is that, or we haven't seen so far, is satellite imagery of several days before that, or possibly even weeks. And it is very possible that this was moved over some time. And I agree, I think at least publicly, we are completely unaware of where this material might be. And in that way, the attacks by the US and indeed by Israel might have blurred the situation in terms of the clarity that the international community will have on the Iranian program, and possibly what the next steps are. And although indeed there are inspectors in Iran at the moment, they are not being allowed to go to these sites. And there is some talk of the Iranians now withdrawing from the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, because two members of that treaty, or two atomic weapon states, have attacked it, even though it is a member of that treaty. And so being a member of it has proven to the Iranians it's not very useful to be a member of that treaty. So I think we're very unclear as to where this will go from here.
That's an excellent point, and thank you for bringing it up. It was actually my next question. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty has been designed very, very specifically to do that, to not proliferate nuclear weapons across the world. Iran is a signatory to it. Pakistan isn't, India isn't, Israel isn't, and they all have nuclear weapons. North Korea isn't, and North Korea has nuclear weapons. Those states have survived. States that haven't survived, that threaten to get nuclear weapons, have been destroyed. So I want to bring this question to Imad first. Imad, you were part of that Iraqi program to try and get a nuclear weapon for security. Never quite happened, but now things have changed. Will Iran look for a weapon for that simple reason? It guarantees security. Imad.
the main point that I'd like to point at is that it's not a matter of how much 60% uranium there is, or it is the brain, the nuclear scientists who are still there, and they have not gone anyplace else. And the thing about the nuclear weapon in Iran is a special case because it's all in the hands of the Khamenei, the supreme leader. Because if you remember, it was Khomeini in 2000 and early 2000, when he was still in Qom, he issued a fatwa that Iran does not pursue a nuclear weapon because Islam forbids killing innocent people en masse like that.
A fatwa that I must point out still exists today. That hasn't changed, right, Imad? That fatwa is still in play today.
This is the point. Khamenei, the present supreme leader, in 2003, confirmed the fatwa of Khomeini not to pursue. Now, what is the thing that is really bothering me, actually, is this issue is being raised again in the Supreme Security Council of Iran and the parliament, and members are sending appeals to Khamenei to reverse that fatwa, to allow them to make the nuclear bomb. It is not NPT or whatever else international rules and strings, because they have, as you mentioned, many states don't abide by them. The important thing in Iran is what Khamenei decides. And he has appointed the 3 successors, expecting to die or to be bombed or killed by Israel.
It's a very, very important point that you're making there. I want to bring it to Laura. Laura, is this a failure, then, of the NPT? It's a treaty that isn't working and needs to be scrapped.
No, absolutely not. Difference between North Korea and Iran, and they're not, neither of them is really good examples, but in the case of North Korea, there was really considerable hope that the Kim regime would fall, would collapse. And so there was consideration, I have been given to understand, there was consideration to have a military attack in North Korea, and it was decided to try to give it some time. And unfortunately, the Security Council was stymied, and the U.S. administration played its cards badly, I think, and that's why we ended up without the agreed framework. But I don't think this is a failure of the NPT. The unfortunate thing is that Iran, I certainly don't condone the attacks, but Iran has been dissembling since 2003 about the nature, the extent, and the activities of its nuclear program. And even in the last couple of years, there have been efforts by Iran to conceal its previous activities. I think the unfortunate thing is that Iran didn't, in 2003, say, yes, we had a nuclear weapons program. Wouldn't you have if you had just come out of a war, a deadly war with your neighbor, Iraq? People would have understood it. Now, they didn't, and they haven't been able, and they cite the fatwa as preventing them from admitting that they had an organized nuclear weapons program, at least up until 2003, but there's no evidence of it since then. So to answer your question, no, I don't think it's a failure of the NPT, but it's really tough when you have 2 members of the IAEA attacking safeguarded nuclear facilities. It sends a very bad signal, and not a particularly positive signal, shall I say, to North Korea as well.
Roxane, one of the reasons Iran has a nuclear program, a civilian nuclear program, it insists that it is peaceful, is as a negotiating tactic. Iran needs sanctions relief. It needs this program almost to be able to have a bargaining chip at the table with the Americans, with the international community. We will reduce our uranium enrichment programs. We'll cancel all of this if you give us sanctions release. Has that backfired now for Iran?
Well, it's a very good point that you raised, because often it's cited as the country that has taken the longest time to develop its nuclear program over the course of 50 years, where other countries have developed nuclear weapons within 4. So clearly the purpose or the will to use this lies in the political rather than in the technical. And I think the leverage it has hoped to use the nuclear program to sway the negotiations for raising the sanctions is clearly one of the main drivers of this whole program. I think that it has not necessarily backfired, because I don't think that this recent attack has set back the nuclear capability of Iran. I think that to address the question you just posed, is this a failure of the NPT? Where I see the failure is that the NPT itself, or the IAEA, has not condemned outright the attack by two atomic weapons states against Iran, and so that has weakened the NPT. I think not only for possibly North Korea, but certainly for other anticipatory states such as perhaps Saudi Arabia. So I think that what we see going forward on this is that Iran is going to still maintain the fact that it has a capability at the negotiating table should the parties go back. And the sticking point will be whether it will agree to a complete reduction of enrichment, or whether it will insist on being able to maintain enrichment at 3.6%.
Imad, it's a very interesting point here. It doesn't matter if you destroy Natanz. It doesn't matter if you destroy Fordow. It doesn't matter if you destroy Isfahan. The knowledge that Iran has is out the bottle. The genie's out the bottle. That knowledge is still there. Imad, it's very difficult to walk that back once you have that knowledge. But how easy is it to rebuild after an attack like this, if indeed it was obliterated? Let's use Trump's word. If it was obliterated, how long will it take for Iran to get back to this point, Imad?
I don't take Trump's words to go by. He is known, he is proven to be, he speaks from both sides of his tongues. Now, but I answer your question. Even now, in these days, I'm sure that the scientists there in Iran are already facing the problems they have been inflicted with and going back to their original ideas. I come to my point. It's all in the hands. We are talking about two things: enrichment and weaponization. Enrichment has been talked about with these two ladies very succinctly. But as for weaponization, it's in the hands of Khamenei and his three successors, potential successors. We don't know who they are. We don't know if they are pro-nuclear bomb or not. And it's all in their hands. The scientists are there. There are tens and hundreds of them. I know quite a few of them. They were with me at the university in the 60s, getting our degrees. And they are now working, even as we speak, working on reconstituting the whatever program the leadership is asking.
Sorry, Imad, we are running out of time, and I want to bring some of your points to our other guests as well. I'm just going to start with Laura very quickly. Laura, the Iranian nuclear program is, clearly seen by Iran as being very useful, but weaponization, that is going to be suicidal for the Islamic Revolution, surely. I mean, if they go towards that, then America has to act. Israel has its excuse to act. This is not something that the Iranian regime wants, if the Iranian regime wants to survive, the Iranian government wants to survive.
I should think not, and I think they have a healthy sense of survival. I imagine that Iran will respond. They almost have to. But in terms of whether this means speeding up their weaponization program, going directly for a bomb, I don't know. They're going to have to think very carefully about that. I am until a week ago, I was less concerned about the U.S. Bombing Iran to get rid of its weaponization program, but now I'm not so sure. I was convinced it was going to be Israel. But I do want to mention something, and that is that the Director General of the IAEA has indeed condemned the attack on these nuclear facilities and has been pretty consistent about it. Do I think that Iran might try to weaponize? If they did, they could probably move forward. If they had concealed other centrifuges, they had already announced that they had another enrichment site. We don't know how many centrifuges they have. It wouldn't require all that much more effort to enrich further than 60%. So I've heard if they were to choose to weaponize the material that they have, they could probably do it in a matter of a few months. Now, whether they have the delivery capability...
Sorry, Laura, we are running out of time, and I do want to come to Roxane. Roxane, this idea of weaponization, it's going to be a very dangerous path for Iran to take. No one's talking about it right now. But surely, this fatwa, the pressure that Iran is under to secure itself is now going to be an internal talking point. Have we been at this point before in Iran where it's become an internal talking point, the security via nuclear weapons?
Well, it's become an increasingly important political football as the pressure on Iran has grown, particularly over these last couple of years with the beginning of the war in Gaza and Israel's offense towards a number of the different parties aligned with Iran. I think that I would agree with your other guest. I think that the fatwa is definitely in the hands of the supreme leader to decide on. It will not be changed unless he agrees. On the other hand, I think there's certainly a possibility that there's been some further action on weaponization simply because Iran is so vulnerable. It's very isolated. You don't see other states coming to its rescue at the moment. And so it could very well be developing, for example, a rudimentary bomb that would not be set up to go into a sophisticated missile delivery system, but that could be used to protect the country should it be further attacked. Now, this has not been officially, I'm projecting here, this has not been officially agreed, and only Trump is saying that he does not agree with the assessment of his intelligence community. The intelligence community in the United States and elsewhere has said definitively that there is no nuclear weapons program in operation at the moment. But I think it's one of those temptations.
Sadly, we're out of time now, but I do want to thank all our guests, Laura Rockwood, Roxane Farmanfarmaian, and Imad Khadduri. And I want to thank you as well for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Imran Khan, and the entire team here in Doha, bye for now.